Well, for more on that, let's speak to John Thomas in Los Angeles. He's a political strategist for the Republican Party. Mr. Thomas, good to speak to you this morning on TRT World, this evening in LA. So what's happening with Donald Trump? He says the party's united. Everyone else thinks it's divided. What's the truth?
The Republican electorate is fairly united behind Donald Trump. I think what you're seeing right now is you're seeing a lot of elected officials, Congress people, members of the establishment that have their own re-election battles that are nervous about Donald Trump and that some of the things he says, they're worried that it could hurt them in their re-election efforts. And so that's what you're seeing, is you're seeing establishment politicians protecting themselves against some of the more bombastic things Trump says.
And you use the word establishment. Trump, this man's a billionaire. If he's not part of the establishment, I don't know what is. But that is playing, isn't it, with U.S. voters? They see him somehow as being removed.
You know, he's very rich, and he'll be the first to tell you that. But in terms of part of the establishment, I think our definition here is the political establishment. And you're running against, Hillary Clinton, who is arguably the most establishment politician ever to run for the office of presidency. And so that's really the dichotomy there is Donald Trump, while he's rich and he knows the politicians, he's never run for office before. This is his first time. And he's making the argument that the system is rigged. It's not working for the average American. And it would take an outsider to turn the system around. And Secretary Clinton is largely representing the same policies of the last 8 years. And look, 75% of Americans today tell Gallup polling that America's on the wrong track. And Secretary of State Clinton represents the status quo.
Well, as you say, you call her establishment. The current president, called her the most qualified person to ever run for office. Of course, as you rightly mentioned, Donald Trump's never held political office in his life. Now, what about some of his comments, especially the things he said about the Gold Star family, the Khans? How can you be behind a man who would insult the family of a dead U.S. serviceman?
No doubt about it, that was a mistake. And I think a lot of Americans feel that it's a lesser of two evils here. On the one hand, Donald Trump says things that are regrettable occasionally.
Occasionally.
Well, it's true. It's true. But look, the fact is the American mainstream media takes, let's say Donald Trump holds a press conference or a rally for 90 minutes. And in that 90 minutes, 95% of what Donald Trump says is right where the American electorate is. But of course, he says something regrettable, picks a fight with somebody that he shouldn't pick a fight with. This is classic Trump. And look, the American electorate doesn't like either of these politicians. They don't like Donald Trump. They don't like the things he says. And they don't like the things Hillary Clinton does. They think she's a crook. They think she's not trustworthy. And right now, the Americans are juggling, do you stay with the devil you know, which is Hillary Clinton, or you take a risk on Donald Trump because you're so frustrated with the direction of the country?
I'll concede that Hillary Clinton is not the most popular candidate that's ever run for office. But as you say, some of the electorate don't back her. Now, how about the Republican Party in general? Surely there is something missing in that party. The soul of the party is going to be ripped out by this guy, because you've got, former presidents not even turning up at the convention. You've got his refusal to back, Paul Ryan and various others, the infighting. Ted Cruz didn't even endorse him, and he came second in the race. The party's fallen apart, and there was another way. They could have stood up and not backed this man, but yet they've decided to have this kind of masochistic infighting. Surely there's something rotten at the heart of that party.
Well, in the case of Senator Ted Cruz, I think that even Cruz probably thinks it was a mistake. Most Republicans said, look, if you're not going to stand with our nominee, you shouldn't have showed up to speak at his, nomination ceremony, essentially. Ted Cruz made a political calculation that Donald Trump is not going to win the presidency, and he wants to be the guy in 4 years to run again saying it's because Donald Trump wasn't a conservative. Look, Donald Trump isn't a conservative. He's running on largely a populist agenda, and that's partly why the establishment of the party has such a problem with the guy. But America in this cycle has become largely populist. That is why Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side, who had many of the same positions as Donald Trump, except for keeping, Trump wants a lower tax and Sanders wanted to raise it. but largely their positions on trade, on foreign entanglements are the same, and it's a populist agenda, and that's not popular with the mainstream establishment in either party.
Absolutely, and that is the point, isn't it? That there has been a disillusionment with the main political establishment, as you rightly described them. Now, John, just finally then, where are you on this? Are you going to be backing Trump come November? And do you think he has any chance of actually beating Clinton, the most qualified candidate to ever run for office?
Yeah, I'll be voting for the Republican nominee because much
Republican nominee, but you're not happy with Trump, though, are you? Come on, John, be honest. You're voting for your party rather than him.
Choice? No.
Okay.
Well, no. There is a dramatically different approach between Hillary Clinton, who will represent exactly the status quo and the same policies of last year, and Donald Trump. I think, although Donald Trump is far from perfect, I think he's infinitely better than Hillary Clinton. And so I'll be with the nominee. Can he win? Look, he has to make some serious changes in the top of his campaign. He has to make this a referendum on Hillary Clinton and her policies, and not on the gaffe of the day, the unforced errors that Trump keeps to make. If this election is about Donald Trump will lose. If Donald Trump can make this about Hillary Clinton and the last 8 years' policies, Donald Trump will win. I think the jury's still out, but I'll tell you this. There is about 10% of the electorate that remains undecided, and we're 100 days away from the election. Typically, at this point in any presidential cycle, there's usually about 3 points that are undecided in the electorate. The electorate doesn't know where to land right now. They don't like Donald Trump, but they also don't like Hillary Clinton. And so I think the person who's going to win this election is going to be the person who makes the mistake the second last. So the last guy to screw up is going to lose.
Yep.
So you just have to hang in there and hope the other person implodes before you do.
Wow. An election like no other. John, really good to speak to you. Thanks for joining us on TRT World. Thank you.